Units in route to the 1090, that's going to be Brian Kent's residence, negative, no way it's call that number.
If y'all want to come on back here to the little room, I'll be with you momentarily. This little one right here on the left.
Clear.
How are you?
Good to see you.
And you again. You asked for a meeting.
Yes, sir.
We provided.
Okay. Thank you for taking your time to meet with me. I'm sure you know why I'm here.
Yes. Well, no, I know the situation, but I don't know why you're here.
Okay.
So
I'm here to see what we can do to resolve it. If there's any kind of way that we can work it out or resolve it, I'd be willing to listen. Or I'm just here to see what we can do if there's any way to work it out.
okay. And we're not opposed to that.
Mm-hmm.
We just soon it had never come to this, but there's some underlying issues that we've got to get past first. I've reviewed the complaint. I've reviewed the letter that the mayor received. And, you know, I've talked to the officers, and I've been running the show for 3 years. So I think that the Brooklet Police Department's not taken seriously. And it's not necessarily just by you or to whatever degree, but we've had some folks who didn't take what it is that we're doing seriously. And I heard over and over in the video portion that Sergeant Baker had that, well, not in little bitty old Brooklet. Well, that never happens in little bitty old Brooklet. And complaining about complaints that people have had. And I'm familiar with all of them. And it isn't one officer, it's all officers. But we haven't had to beat anybody up. We haven't knocked anybody out. We haven't shot anybody. We're simply trying to do a job. And the thing that you must understand, I must express it anyway, is that police work is exactly the same all across the country. And in fact, more officers get killed in rural situations than they do in, I think the word was, highly congested areas. New York City, with 38,000 officers, has less per capita get killed in the line of duty than Georgia rural areas, which are very dangerous as a matter of fact. So you admitted that you were speeding. I have clocked you 3 other times speeding, but because I knew who you were, I was endeavoring not to do it. And I shook my finger at you several times. And a whole lot of people who go to the school up there. And not for the reason that my wife works there, but because we're just trying to get them to abide. We've done 10,000 plus warnings in 2 years and 3 months. And that's when we went over the 10,000 mark. And that's warnings. We're not charging anybody. That's not a speed trap. We're not making any money off it. We're just trying to get them to slow down. Because we had school buses doing double the speed limit on Parker. We had log trucks doing 85 miles an hour when I got here. They didn't take Brooklet seriously. Finally, they're beginning to take, this is law and order, same as any other place. We wouldn't behave the way that we do in Brooklet with GSP or with the Sheriff's Department, because everybody knows what's going to happen if you do. I don't think that you took us seriously. That's just my opinion. I think maybe you will now. But that's not why we were doing it. And the officer was going to give you a warning to start with. Because you expressed a couple things that I just don't feel were true to start with. That you didn't know what the speed limit was. I mean, you live right there in front of the 25-mile-an-hour speed limit sign. Bearing that in mind, and you worked there, and you know the environment, kids and teachers and so on and so forth. So, I've thought about it, not completely. I'm open for a little bit of wiggle room. But I want a letter from you, to whom it may concern, reference the police department, that zeroes this out. You were upset that I went and told somebody. You know who the person is that I told? Him. Because I knew that he was a rational mind and a calm voice to speak to you. And I think that was the right move. But you seem to be upset about that. I'll do it again if I have to. Hopefully not in this particular case, but you know, it's all about trying to get this thing to work. I want a letter from you dropping back from your position that the officer was absolutely wrong. You knew you, and you knew her.
But he didn't know us.
But he didn't know you. And we have people in this town. We had another person who all the little old ladies at the Methodist church are going, he's a young boy. His daddy showed up and wanted to have a fist fight with the police chief here. That's dumb. That's dangerous. And I'm the guy who's next in the chopping block. Bearing all those things in mind, we would like to get along too. We just want people to do what they're supposed to be doing. And in our estimation, we're doing an easy does it version of it. In fact, people who ask my management style, it's easy does it until easy doesn't. And occasionally we run up against easy doesn't. And arguing about getting out of a car is on the edge of easy doesn't. The officer didn't know. He came from Glenville, where it's much more apt to get into a fist fight with people on the side of the road. And you had context. He had no context. And you had mentioned the possibility of trying to become a police officer with Statesboro. Was that correct?
I had an interview set up on, I had an interview set up today.
Well,
And I don't know that I'm disqualified, but
we don't want to disqualify you in the future. You may have to redo that again simply because of the timing of it. But once you get a 6 months or a year under your belt, you will absolutely see, if you're going to be any kind of a police officer at all, that once you make a traffic stop, your life is on the line. You don't know what the other person is. You're going to see people who you would think were nice, wonderful human beings running around with loaded AR-15s stuck in the front of their deal and a bad attitude about the police.
I mean, I've seen the videos of the GSP who, you know, it's just a routine traffic stop and somebody's got a sawed-off shotgun and just blow him right there, and he wasn't ready for it.
Over and over and over this thing happens, to the point that we continue to do our job in the midst of a society, some of who hate us and some who absolutely do not understand us and the situations that they're in. And some of it's just absolutely asocial behavior, you see. And that's the stuff that we have to run up against. Now, what I'm willing to do is if we can get a letter, basically
Sorry, I didn't bring him in.
I didn't think that.
basically an apology that the situation got out of hand, then I will go to the solicitor's office and I will move to drop the charges. But it's going to be what they call a null pros. We decline to prosecute. The obstruction arrest is still going to show up on your record. Now, your options as regards that, you can get it expunged. But that's something that you're going to have to do. It won't be our end of it. And if anybody ever has any question, then I can say that we sat down and talked about it. We were able to work this thing out. But what I want to make sure is understood. I'm not dropping this because I'm worried about the charge. I'm not dropping this because I'm concerned about the officer. I'm not worried about this because I'm worried about being sued. I'm not doing any of those things, and you must understand that. I'm dropping it because you don't need it. Just like we didn't need the stuff on that date. And because otherwise, your life's okay. You know, what say you?
I think that's reasonable. I do have a question to ask. I went out about the warrant. I went down to the sheriff's office and I waited 5.5 hours for somebody from this department to show up, and nobody ever showed up.
They never told us. And I don't know that we're not supposed to show up. They have a warrant.
It's not necessary for the department to show. Once,
And nobody ever let us know anyway.
And they put me in this little room for 5.5 hours, and they kept saying that they were waiting on you guys to show up, and then
They
I was
didn't
about
call
to
us
go
on the
to-
radio. They didn't call
Yeah.
us on the telephone.
Okay.
Now, that's their issue.
Uh-huh.
You know, it's unfortunate you were in that situation, but I will just allude to the fact this isn't new to you. No communication occurs. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And if they'd have called and told us you were down there waiting, all we would have shown up is go, oh, why is he waiting? Just do the deal. They didn't slap handcuffs you on the side of the road.
That's why I went down there.
I mean, so what we did was we took what it is that we had and we go before a magistrate. It gives us an extra layer of another rational mind dealing with something from strictly a law and order standpoint. And then we run it past them. And if the probable cause exists, they issue the warrant. And then, of course, then it gets put in front of a judge. Now, that's just smart police work, if you can do it and get away with it. What I'm saying is if you can do it without having to handcuff somebody on the side of the road. This isn't our preferred method. We don't like arresting citizens. We're not opposed to it because that happens to be one of our jobs. Nevertheless, what you had more on that?
No, I think I understand. So you would prefer me write a letter
Yes.
stating that, just an apology?
In retrospect, and having had time to think about it, some place in there about I see things in a different light.
I mean, I do, and I honestly have, you know, I've talked to a lot of different police officers, and it's amazing, people that I know, people that I'm friends with, and they introduced me to this new side of it. I mean, you know, I have friends at Statesboro, I have friends at GSP, and I have friends in Savannah, and they tell me you know, regardless of any way you feel, this is what I always look at
This is our world.
in the whole situation awareness thing and trying to control the situation. And it's given me a new perspective. It really has.
A traffic stop is a scene.
Mm-hmm.
And the teacher, bless her heart, walked up and certainly felt the absolute compelling need to communicate to you in the middle of that deal. Because of 38 years in the line of work and knowing who you are and knowing where she's walking from, I may not have been so abrasive.
Mm-hmm.
But that wasn't the case.
Right.
And the Supreme Court's already said you must look at it not as a citizen. You must look at it, what would a reasonable and prudent officer do in the midst of that situation? And our world has been turned upside down. It's already a tough enough world, but why in the world you'd want to join law enforcement now is beyond me. Because I'm no longer telling anybody this is a good place to be. We are a target because we exist. You know, there's a new level of discrimination. They're killing cops just because they're in a uniform. Just for no other reason. So, we're not social workers. We're law enforcement.
Mm-hmm.
We can't fix anything. All we are is law enforcement. But society keeps demanding that we behave inside of this new paradigm that they're putting on us. Well, the world has not changed. It's a violent place. It's a brutal place. And if you don't pay attention, if he had just kind of wandered up, that's how you end up dead. And, you know, there you have it. So what I'm looking for is something where you take the monkey off our back.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're not comfortable with it either. And in turn, I will go take the monkey off your back.
Okay.
And that's about as good as I can do. I'm sorry.
Just trying to get clarity.
I will go to the solicitor's office and request from them, we desire to null pros, and I'll put it in a letter form. And
Speeding ticket still,
speeding ticket needs to hold because that was the basis for it.
okay.
It's 38 in a 25.
Yeah.
So, and in the
You've
end,
got me on tape saying that. You've got me on tape saying I was absolutely guilty of speeding, and I'll pay those.
listen, we're not
You did that right here in the council meeting.
right.
Uh-huh.
We're
Yeah.
not trying
I-
to.
I-
We're
I-
not
I-
trying to spank
Listen,
you.
I have no problem paying the ticket because I was
Right,
speeding
yes.
in this community. I will not.
What
just
I don't-
I wanted to make sure
Yeah.
that
Right,
he was
yes.
here and
Yes.
we're
Well,
talking
null
on this
pros.
charge, not.
Yeah.
not-
The
Null
obstruction.
pros on the obstruction.
Okay.
Obstruction is not that big of a deal, and it's a low misdemeanor on the basis of what it is that occurred.
Mm-hmm.
It will not bar you from being in law enforcement because all they will ever do is contact me to find out what the context was, and I'll put it down as to a learning experience. Don't ever do that in the future. Certainly not in a big city. Yes.
How do you go about getting something expunged?
That's probably going to require an attorney. But if all it is an arrest that was null prost, they can put it in front of a local, probably superior court judge, and then null pros. But the fact that we null prost should be quite sufficient for the Methodist Church, I would think, and for the reason, I don't know, are you in any hassle with them?
Not that I know of. I mean, it doesn't look good for me that I'm a local minister, and they're not real crazy.
It is not the first time. We've got police officers. We've got, in other jurisdictions, we've got lawyers. We've got judges who get sideways. This is not an abnormal, unfortunately, it's not an abnormal situation.
The DS, our boss knows I'm with him this morning.
Yes,
And
well, I expected that you would be.
We're just trying to, he asked me to just keep him posted and let him know how things went.
As far as the police department is here, so long as we're in an understanding, we have no problem dropping this thing away because the odds of this thing ever happening again in your lifetime are really very small.
I'm hoping.
That's where you go.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, right. So, you write the letter, I'm going to write a letter, I will make a copy of the letter that we have declined to prosecute, and that we've worked out an amicable something, I will make sure that you have a copy of it. Make several copies of it and put them in different places. You need to give one to probably the organization. Do you call it a diocese? To whoever. The boss. You give it to the conference boss.
We'll get
Yeah,
working
we'll,
on it.
And
I'll make sure they see it.
And if I remember, I will even put in there that furthermore, we have no problem with moving for an expungement. And that whatever letter you produce, I'm going to attach to the deal, so it goes into their file. What I don't want is somebody, we threatened you, so we backed off. And anybody asks me, I'll tell them to go talk to you here in the community. And you can tell them what you want, but I would suggest that you be nice about it, because it only benefits the both of us.
Well, I mean, here's the deal. I do want to tell you this. I have since moved from here, but you know, my daughter goes to the preschool here. I've got connections with the church, and she goes to school, and you know, I'm going to spend my time here in this community with
We
Girl
see you all the
Scouts
time.
and dance and everything else. So, you know, I want to be able to come here and this to be the town that it was when I don't want to have a cloud over me when I come here. I want it to be good.
None of the people that currently work here are those kind of people. Nobody's going to pick on you. Nobody's going to avoid you if you go flying at 45 and 25, you know. But nobody's going to retaliate. In our world, this wasn't that big of a deal. We didn't bust up any knuckles. There wasn't any bloodletting. No shots fired. But in the last several months, it's become altogether too. I have to drop back to the Donaldson deal. We have barricades for a reason. And we don't want people going through those barricades into all of these people in the middle of our peanut festival. Of course, the story that gets put out is he's an angel. Accused my wife of cussing him like a sailor. You know my wife. She's never done that in her entire life.
Yeah,
Okay.
I couldn't see her do that.
Liar. He cussed the officer in front of witnesses who have great integrity like a sailor. F you, this is BS. My business is right. And insisted to the point he got himself put into handcuffs. Now, we were very, very busy, and he finally calmed down. He saw we was in the middle of a bad situation. He got handcuffed. Well, we unhandcuffed him, said, don't do it anymore. Well, after the fact, his brother starts threatening the officer. And you're not going to do that. We may be a small department, but we're the real police. You're not going to do it. And I'm going to have to stand my ground. Resolve and sturdiness is the number one part of our job. So, well, he writes a complaint. I write him a letter back dealing with his complaint. Yeah, basically, you have no complaint. In fact, these are the 4 charges you can be charged with. If this continues, I'm going to charge you with these deals so you can go to court. So I wrote him a letter. Well, that doesn't make him happy because things aren't going his way. Daddy shows up 10 days later, wants to have a fist fight with the police chief, who wasn't even the officer on the side of the road. And we have basically a knockdown, drag out here in which there's a pistol involved. Well, now they're going around town telling everybody their story. Well, except we're not telling anybody our story. Our story is the story. It's all on film. It's all on video. So lately, we've been having some people who think, what is the basis of our republic? That all men are created equal. Around here, there are some men who think that that some men are more equal than others. Well, guess what? That's not the way it's going to work. And I am the person with my neck in the chopping block who will stand up for that position. And there's no other position I can take. If you become a police officer, you're going to find that to be the case.
I would hope it would be.
And
I would hope somebody would.
somebody has to have the resolve, and somebody has to have the sturdiness. Is it fun? Is it nice? Do you feel real good about it? No, but somebody's got to do it. And that's the position that we're in. And I'm proud of my officers and actually the level of restraint. Arrests have gone up around here, but not usually of locals. Forgeries. We got a lady, the murder lady who was babysitting for people up here when she was taken into custody. We put the cuffs on her. Forgery people, dope people, stolen vehicle people, one DUI after another, including a Republican state representative candidate who told my officer, "This isn't going to go well for you." Right, you see. So it's not you. It's a community that's growing up and it has troubles. Everything that can happen up the street can happen here, and it drives through here on a regular basis. We had 4 armed robbers last December the 10th. Yeah, right around that time. All of them are in custody, but they're prepared to kill somebody in this town over an Xbox and $100. So please view things in this new light, and I certainly hope that you'll go from supporting the complainers to going, let's at least give them the benefit of the doubt. And
Well, I think you're a very reasonable person, and that's what the mayor, he used that word. He said, he urged me to come talk to you. He said, I think you'll find that the police chief is reasonable, and he's an educated man who can sit down and have a good conversation. I'm glad that I came in and talked to you, because I feel like you care, and
I do care, and I certainly don't want anything to be on top of you. In all fairness to me, I'm probably the scariest guy in this town because of where I've come from. But in deference to the rest of the world, I try to use this rational, reasonable person in order to do what it is that I've been hired to do. And don't think that it hasn't caused some political trouble for me in the background. You know, the councilmen who are not, they're not police officers. Some of the councilmen are upset that these things are happening. And I have to tell them that this is part of the police world. Get used to it, you know, and wonder whether or not a police officer can be absolutely 100% right and still be fired, still be ruined, still be put in jail, etc., and be completely right and charged. This is the world that we live in. And while I'm not comfortable with that, I'm comfortable with that, if that makes any sense.
I had the conversation with Ms. Middleton after all of that, and her daughter, and I said, you know, one of the things you have to understand in light of that is so many times when officers are responding, even to domestic disputes in which the female has called, the female jumps on the officer.
That's correct.
And I said, he does not, you know, he doesn't know. He doesn't have that background and stuff. So, you know, they're trying to scan every situation as possible potential threats and everything else, and have to go through that, work down that assessment as they go through, and they're still doing the job. I said, so it gets difficult. Just make sure I've got this right for him. He's to get you a letter apologizing for the situation in retrospect and having time to think about the process.
Exonerating us of wrongdoing. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. One of the things that concerned me was when John Baker's in the window with you, and it started getting loud. The officer gets out of his car and comes toward him, and it's all on film. John sees him peripherally coming to him and just put his hand up. Mm-hmm. In the letter that you wrote when you were upset, it said that he shoved him and told him to back off. He didn't shove him, and he didn't tell him to back off. He never mentioned anything like that. He kept looking at you. Mm-hmm. And that's all on video. That's not true. And if you were just to present that letter, other people would, I'm not calling you a liar, in the heat of the situation, in an emotional aftershock, I think is when it was written, but that never happened, and that made me angry. You see?
It's hard to get every single detail from memory. Now, I will tell you. I
Because
went home that
all
day.
detail is colored by,
Colored by
I know it is,
and
yeah.
our own bias. Letter apologizing for the situation in retrospect and having, basically
It's all right.
using, in retrospect and having time to think about the process and process this. And in that letter, exonerating the department of wrongdoing. Will not prosecute, will write the letter that they're moving for expungement. That you'll
yeah,
have
I'm moving for null pros, decline to prosecute, and that any expungement will be the responsibility of yourself, because we don't actually do any of that. That's a civil process within the courts. You have to petition the court for expungement, and that we won't have any problem with that. So,
And then the obstruction charge is still on the record, but he can move to get that expunged.
correct. And the citation will be dealt with probably as one of the 9 mile an hour and under, just where it gets paid and it doesn't go any points against you. We don't have any problem
Do you
with that.
have any tickets on your record?
Then you're eligible for that.
Then listen very carefully to what the judge has to say.
So I need to, instead of just paying that online, do I need to go to?
Yeah, come to court.
If you pay it online, it's gonna go on your record.
Okay.
You go to court and you talk to the
Kane Smith.
Ken Smith, listen to what he has to say. And he will ask you, do you wanna go before the judge or before him? If you
Called
go before
pretrial
him-
diversion.
If you go before him, he'll keep it off of your driving record, and
It'll be a minimum.
it'll be a minimum.
And that's, it may take a little bit of time for one. You can get rid of this one immediately, and it may take a little bit of time, up to a couple of years, for the other one. But there will be no bar on our part for you having it expunged. So,
If everybody's good with it, I'm good with it. And the reason I'm here, I'm on city council.
Yes,
I'm
sir.
over the police department. So when the chief said that you were having a meeting, I want to be here. And to let everybody know, if a complaint comes in, I review the complaint, I review all the video that's there. So I know what's going on.
Okay. That's good. I appreciate your time. I really do.
yes, sir. You were gonna.
As we conclude, can we let him slide out and me talk to y'all just a second?
Sure, absolutely.
I mean, I don't know if we're at conclusion, but thank you.
No, we
I
are,
appreciate
we
it.
are.
Brian, I'll be out in
And
just a second.
we'll go forward from here.
Tell me your name again.
William Griffith?
Okay, Mr. Griffith. I remember seeing you up there. Thank you. I appreciate your time. You want to show this door?
Yes, sir, please.
And walking through the neighborhood, well, you gotta be up early to see Mr. William walking. 5:30. I've almost backed out of him, over him at 5:30 in the morning going to church. Thank y'all.
Sure.
Appreciate it. One concern. With the, as you told him, in the motion, in everything else. Talk to Dunham.
I'm sorry.
Talk to Dunham. I completely,
He talks dumb?
no, talk to
Talk
Dr.
to Dunham.
Officer Dunham.
Oh, yes, yes.
Dutton, I'm
Yes,
sorry.
yes.
Just,
You did, or you want me to?
do, if
Okay.
you will, just
Yes.
with that, to have it written in the report when you got a witness who doesn't have a dog in the fight that says Brian didn't say get back, to have it in the report. We all tend to, we all can have a tendency to exaggerate a little bit in our defense and everything else. And I feel like with the units he came out of, they were so busy covering their backsides with all the rules of engagement and everything else as of late. Just, be careful.
I'm not.
Wasn't he in the Rangers?
Yeah, he was in the Rangers.
And so with just the stuff that they've been under, the rules of engagement that they had and everything.
We are working on that, but we've never had any problem with him. But he's also used to being told, he's also used to, if he gives an order,
It's immediate, and here we go, and this is it. And it's such a different, with chaplains that come in, former military chaplains that come into the ministry, it's a different kind of a perspective working through that. And you get into the church setting with all the dynamics that are in the church, and it's so different. So just, you know.
We are working on that. Baker, when I came here, was a loose cannon because nobody had ever told him. And over the 3 years, we've turned him from a loose cannon to at least rational most of the time. And he can always explain his position. But we've got him headed in the right direction. I believe that we can do the same thing with Dutton.
No doubt, and that's why, but just, you know, wisdom, fatherly advice, and you know.
We've discussed this.
You have to, the one thing I preach at church, and the one thing I've struggled with most at church is staff unity. But most of the time, Ryan, early on, I'm going to go to the mat for you as long as I know you're telling me the truth. But we all have that tendency, and you got to, when I ask you, you got to back up and say, am I exaggerating this, or is this fact? And just, I'm not doing real well with staff unity right now around the issue you know about.
Well, they're bucking you, and you must operate with the same resolve and sturdiness, even at the cost of your job.
No, well, and I talked to, one of the reasons I'm talking to the DS is, you know, I don't know what's going to happen in June. Somebody on the street asked one of the church members this past week, when y'all get your new preacher? So.
All right, I get people calling up. They've heard that the police chief's getting fired, so that they want the position.
So.
I was going to tell you about. It's important, and I've lost it like 17 times now over the course of the. And I'll probably remember it in a few minutes. Yes. One of the things that you have to, here's the context that I wasn't going to tell him about because I don't know if he knew about it, but one of the women, who I may have been a teacher or may have not, one of the women and her husband got a divorce, and she was insisting that because he had a meltdown July the 4th or last Christmas or something, you may even know what I'm talking about, in that he was wanting to come get the kids, and she didn't want him to have the kids because it was Matthew. As a result of Matthew, he'd had a meltdown, and so we got information that was passed to us to be concerned about it, I guess from Amy and them, that there was a father his mother was concerned about because he was on some medications, and we didn't know who we were dealing with. And when he goes up to the car, and he's a little argumentative, you know, he sees him pulling into the school. All he knows is this unnamed person. When he doesn't know whether he's dealing with that person or not. And so the only context he had was not positive. It was negative. And in his defense, you know, we have people driving around this town with loaded AR-15s and a bad attitude about us, about the universe, you see. And so it is a fine line. All rules of engagement are only proper based upon this thing that may or may not even occur.
Yeah, no, I believe it.
And I know that you know that. You know, if he had been anything less and the moment had been such that it was a life or death and he didn't know it, then he would have been wrong. I would rather he overdoes it and goes home, between me and you, and than not to do it.
We're on the same page with that. And you know, our conversations
confidential, I
that
would
we've
expect.
had a lot, you know.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, those aren't.
Right, right.
As far as
No,
I'm concerned.
that's wide open.
With where I'm at and, you know, with that, and it's why we talked about, you know, and I've had so much with the church, I haven't had time to do the stuff I want to do with the community, with the pastors. But, you know, the whole thing that I talked about from the get-go is we do that. I want y'all on board, is we do it because that mess is moving more and more here as far as the attitudes and everything else. So we just wanted to, you know, ask you to please, you know, if you have that opportunity to have that conversation with him, but just because it's such it went to court.
It wouldn't be pretty.
It wouldn't be pretty, and to have that repeated in the paperwork, any other than what's on the ticket and setting up court, going to see Mr. Smith through that, is there in the letter? Is there anything else he needs to do?
He made a bunch of accusations that, in hindsight, I hope he sincerely sees didn't matter. We're null processing because of his attitude, and I want it to be a learning experience all the way around. Nothing else that I can think of that he needs to do. But at the state, now here's the part that you need to understand, the state can arbitrarily decide to go forward with the case. But the odds of them doing that are extremely small because of their caseload, and they don't want to get into it. And if I go down there and give
Who
them...
would that be? Would that come through county, or would that come through?
No, that's the solicitor. The solicitor's office could choose to move forward with something. For instance, an example is domestic violence situations. The wife can say, oh, he didn't do anything, I refuse to do anything, we're not going to go ahead. The state can go forward with it because it has an interest in protecting regardless of what that person says. They can still do this in any other case, but they don't want any more of a workload
Right.
or to run the risk of losing a case either. So when we null process, we're not null processing because we've been threatened. We're null processing because it's in the best interest of the individual and the community.
Okay.
That's it. That's the sum total of it.
Okay.
You know.
All right. Thank y'all very
Yes.
much. If there's anything we can do, let us know.
Well, there's a lot of gossip going on in the background, and if sometimes misinformation, disinformation, new information, if you found this to be a rational, reasonable end to an otherwise dirty situation, say something nice about it. That's all. You're in a position that you'll be listened to. And far be it from me not to use you.
I'm on the song.
So, have a good one, and whenever he's got the letter ready, just let me know, and I will get together and I'll do my end of it, and sometime within this week, we'll null process. It's still way out in the future, but we'll nip it in the bud.
Just, and it'll be immediate, but any idea what the timeline is on it?
No.
Okay.
No, there's been nothing. We have other cases that are still out there from many months before that.
Okay.
So, and this is relatively minor.
Okay.
But if we can just get it done within the week, I'll deliver the letter to the solicitor within this week.
Okay.
So,
All right. Thank y'all.
Have a great day.
step into my office. This one.
Yeah, then I gotta go around and go back up to the other.
But
I think,
oh,
You wanna make
that
me
one's
walk
that
around?
one's. This is